Thank you, Phil. I'd like to, first of all, thank you all for making this session. I know that we're between you and lunch, so I understand the patience you're giving us. I'd like to introduce today Sudesh Peram. Sudesh is the identity management product manager at Twitch, so he is, in fact, the owner of the implementation of two-factor authentication. And his background includes significant stints at other major enterprise software companies like Okta, Microsoft, Amazon, and a number of others. AirWatch, yes, that's right. So his background actually brings significant experience to the table in terms of the implementation that they're doing at Twitch, with a slight twist, given Twitch's business. Sudesh, you want to tell us about what you guys are doing at Twitch?
Sure. Yeah, it's 25 minutes to lunch, so I'll keep this really short. So let me tell a little bit about Twitch and what we do, and then I'll talk more about how security is really important at Twitch and why we thought 2FA was really helpful to us, followed by what makes us really like Authy. I think that's what Mark has brought me here for. But so let's get started on what Twitch is. I know there are some gamers in the crowd, so what Twitch is the largest live video platform for gamers. So what this means is, what if every single time you played a game and you thought you always sucked and you wanted to learn better skills? So that's why a platform like Twitch exists, because people come here, one, to learn more skills about certain games. Two, there is instant community, because I love my Counter-Strike, I love my Hearthstone. So these are sort of things that bring people together on Twitch. So there is one, entertainment aspect of it, two, the skill aspect, and three is the community aspect of Twitch. So that's what makes Twitch really, really unique compared to all other competitors and probably even YouTube. So, so to give you some context, so this is what Twitch is today. We have about 10 million daily active users, and we are one of the largest sources of internet traffic at peak time. So that's about 2 million plus concurrent viewership at Twitch, say at 8 p.m. Standard PST. So with this sort of scale, it brings its own challenges in terms of maintaining and running a service like that. And that's why we think security is really important at Twitch. So before that, I'll give some intro on the humble beginnings of Twitch. So Twitch was an offshoot of an experiment conducted by Justin Kan. If you remember Justin, he started or basically invented this thing called live casting. So what it means is he basically stuck a head cam on top of his head and walked around San Francisco and live casted pretty much what he did throughout the day. So that attracted a lot of attention, and I think he got a lot of TV shows because of that. So that sort of eventually translated into sort of a product. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to make this sort of feature available to a broader audience, as in he wanted to enable people like me, you, to go ahead and sort of broadcast our interests and what we do with our life. So that's how sort of Twitch, sort of Justin.tv got started. And as part of this process, this was started in 2007. As part of this process, one of the things they've discovered is gaming was very, very popular on Justin.tv. There were a lot of other segments on Justin.tv as well, like including tech, entertainment, hiking. But gaming was one of the things that attracted a lot of people. So in the end, they decided to pivot the business to be more sort of gaming focused, and that's how Twitch was born. And between 2007 and 2011, there was huge growth in terms of the number of broadcasters and the kind of content that was growing within Twitch. So that attracted a lot of attention, and that's why in 2014, Amazon acquired Twitch. So that's a little bit of context on how Twitch was sort of born and what it is today. So when I talk about Twitch, community is something we take very, very seriously at Twitch. So broadly, there are two kinds of people on Twitch: people who create content and people who consume content. People who create content are basically the content creators. These are people who are pulling in the audiences to be on Twitch. So this is the only compelling reason that I go on Twitch. Pretty much any user goes on Twitch to see what's out on Twitch, what's the new content out there. One thing to remember here is these are people who are spending their time to be here on Twitch and broadcast. So we want to help them monetize their time, or rather the content they create at their own time. So we have a bunch of methods to monetize this. We have subscriptions, we have donations, we have another product called Bits, where users sort of give money to these broadcasters so that they can continue broadcasting and create great content. So as you understand, the focus here is shifted from just broadcasting to sort of content creation to becoming sort of a job. So it's becoming more and more important every day, because this is how I earn my money. If I were a broadcaster, this is what I do on a daily basis to make my living. So this is becoming a much more serious platform than what it was like 7, 8, 10 years ago, right? So that's why security has become very critical for us. Like, we don't want people to be blocked in doing their daily job. And to give you some context, some of our top broadcasters make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So on an average stream, costs them maybe thousands of dollars. So if I'm not able to broadcast at a specific time on a specific day, I'm going to lose this audience. So the key thing to remember here is we are not YouTube. We are basically a live broadcasting platform. So it's like tuning into your TV. So if I go to at 9 p.m., if I'm expecting a certain show, if I don't see it 2 days in a row, I'm going to tune out of it. So I'm automatically losing audience. So that's what happens to these content creators if they're not able to sort of create and post or broadcast content on time. So that's the reason I'm mentioning this, is because that's where sort of security comes in, because we want security to be to enable these broadcasters to post on time, to have the most secure platform. So this is one side of Twitch. So there is the content creators, and the other one side is going to be the consumers. These are some of our creators on Twitch, so some of the popular ones. I really like Castro. He did a great job on Pokemon Go, if you've ever played that. And the next one I want to talk about was the users part. So in terms of users, these are people who come to watch content every day created by the content creators, and these are people like you and me. So I pretty much spend about 30 to 45 minutes every day tuning into a specific Twitch channel at a specific time or during my commute. So that's how I consume Twitch on a daily basis. But then the identity I create on Twitch is not my real name. So it's unlike Facebook, where I have to actually put in my real name and call myself Sudesh Peram, and I have my aunt, uncle, my mother, grandfather, everybody on my friends list. And I don't want to do things which I don't feel comfortable on Facebook. That's why I have Twitch, to go and it's sort of an escapism for me to create this new identity and sort of live that identity in this gaming world, right? So we take that very seriously. We want to make sure that users trust our platform in creating these new identities. So in order to protect that, we need to enable them by giving them the right set of tools. So if you look at the tools, it comes down to the problems that we have. So typically, when you have accounts of this scale and this sort of intensity on a daily basis, they're sort of vulnerable to common problems with accounts, like hijacking, like social engineering, basically securing, procuring passwords and sort of blackmailing these users, or doing things that are not comfortable, that they won't be comfortable doing otherwise. So these are sort of things that some of our users and both content creators and users face, and that's why we think 2FA is really important to us.
Are you saying that gamers are prone to shenanigans?
Absolutely. So to give you some context, so look at those. Sorry, I forgot them. All right. So look at those. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, I went ahead.
There you go.
All right. So let me just point. So look at all those names on chat here. This is Goob1217, that's Larger Brood. These are the sort of names you cannot have on Facebook. And these are the sort of names I don't want my friends on Facebook to be knowing as well. So that's why we want to protect all these identities securely. And we also have these are the number of streamers, watchers at this particular period of time. And there is this subscriptions this person has, which is he pays $5. Someone can pay $5 to subscribe to the stream at a certain period of time. So all these features are sort of gated by the identity system Twitch has today. So it's becoming all the more critical that this central identity that Twitch has is protected really, really well. And that's where 2FA comes in. So all of you know this, right? So 2FA is most effective in protecting account security, in protecting account takeovers, and it's critical for account security. For us, it's even more critical because of the reasons I talked about earlier. But we should all agree on one thing. Like, there is some friction when we add 2FA to a certain account or a certain product, because it's going to make it a little more difficult to log in. But I personally think that the benefits sort of outweigh the sort of inconvenience that's been caused. Someone said it even better if you look at this particular tweet. So I feel like this is a best summarization of what 2FA is. I mean, it's simple. I mean, it's free. For God's sake, please use it. Because it gives you one thing that pretty much any other security tool cannot give you. It gives you peace of mind. Like, as far as my account is concerned, I want to make sure that I can use my account anytime. I can use it on sort of on a public Wi-Fi network without compromising my account details. I think that's super critical when it comes to 2FA. So next, what I'm going to talk about is, like, now that we've decided that 2FA is really important to account security, specifically at Twitch, we had two different discussions at Twitch. One is particularly focused on, should we build it, or should we use a different provider to do 2FA? So when I talked to my engineering manager, the first thing he said was, yeah, there are a bunch of SMSs we can send to them. There's some codes, and we can implement it. But then as we got talking more and more, we realized that it's a big undertaking. The reason number one being there's a huge engineering cost upfront in terms of like having someone build this service, integrate with a lot of SMS providers, create the verification codes and things like that, followed by actually maintaining the service over a period of time. And the biggest problem is in building it yourself is the scalability and the reliability of the service. That is something that is not so core to your business. If you're an identity provider, it's a different story. But if your product and your focus is something different, you don't want to spend inordinate amount of time doing all of this scalability needs for specifically 2FA. So at Twitch, we went through this exercise and we decided, OK, let's just move on and create and buy the service, or rather work with a provider who would enable us to build this, but sort of in a context of like, let's outsource a lot of it, but then let's bring in the critical benefits that we get from 2FA. So we came up with 4 important criteria for like shortlisting, or rather deciding what provider we wanted to choose. And the first one was service reliability. We wanted to work with providers only who had probably 3 nines or 4 nines of reliability in terms of the service. That was super critical to us. The next one is the multi-platform support. Twitch in particular has users across different platforms. We have a large presence in Android, iOS, and our broadcasters are usually on PCs or Macs. So this means that there needs to be a solution that works across all of these different platforms. And the third one is we never want our users to get logged out. Or what if I forgot my phone? Can I use my desktop? What if I lost my phone? Can I reset my phone as phone 2FA? So that became very critical, and we wanted this to be self-service. The reason is the fourth one. There's support cost to doing all of this, because every time we get a call to support, it costs us a lot more to process it, and sometimes we might not be able to do anything immediately. So we don't want the users to feel helpless. So all of this together, I think that's where, when we sort of use this criteria to evaluate a lot of different providers, we stumbled upon Authy. So it sort of met most of our needs here. Particularly, the things I want to talk about is the multi-platform support and self-service here. So Authy has presence on iOS, Android, and they have a desktop app, which is very well liked by our broadcasters because it's easy to use. And in terms of self-service, I've used the Authy phone reset form myself because I changed phones, and once I lost my phone, so I had to do it myself. It was super easy. It took me like a few minutes to go reset my phone and then use my new phone as a 2FA. So this became sort of very obvious that Authy was a great fit for Twitch in particular. So let's talk more about sort of how we implemented it. And this was actually much, much easier than we thought. So we did a pilot on our staff accounts for about a few months and tested it and felt like we were really comfortable with it. And then the real fun was when we started building it for our regular products, that's in the Twitch.tv. it was really, really simple. My engineer basically paraphrased that it was the easiest thing he's ever used in terms of APIs, and all it took him was a few days to actually hook it up and then create a proof of concept, and then within a few weeks, we were able to roll it out to production. It was that easy. So Mark wanted me to talk more about the implementation, but honestly, it was the easiest thing ever, so I don't have much to say there. And one of the good things about Authy, working with Authy, was we had really good engineering resources to work with. I mean, we didn't need them, but then they were, they were really, really accessible compared to other providers that we wanted to work with. So here are some screenshots from our product today. So this is the setup process that we have. It's really simple. You put in your phone number, you receive a code, and then you verify it, and then bam, you're set to work. And if you already have Authy installed on your phone, you can even bypass the verification code step, and that's one step less. So it's pretty much a two-step process, and all it takes is a few minutes of your time to just set it up, and there's really no excuse to not set up 2FA anymore. Yeah, these are the screenshots with respect to login, where you put in your password and then your token, and then it's redirecting you to the login page right after this.
Yes, Sudesh. Twitch did a lot of hard work in terms of making sure that they took the whole user experience down to a minimum number of steps. So if you're looking at implementing for your own site or an application you have, just checking out the Twitch process is a really good starting point to think about the user experience design.
Sure. So in terms of what we want to do next, so we want to, like I mentioned, there is really no excuse for you to not set up 2FA anymore. So the people who we care about pretty much every user on Twitch, but then content creators are sort of special to us in a way because they really bring all the audience together. They really bring the people to be on. They're basically the reason that people come to be on Twitch every single day. So we are making a huge effort to make sure all of these partners, pretty much all broadcasters, have 2FA enabled. And we are doing it in a variety of ways, but a lot of it is more about outreach. We want to make sure we reach out to them and say that 2FA is super easy to set up. These are the benefits. These are what you're getting for. So we're doing a bunch of things around that, and some features also as well. Some of the biggest concerns we get from our audience is, why are you making me download a new app? I already have a different authenticator app on my phone that is pretty popular. I want to use it on your product as well. The answer to that question from my side, or rather Twitch side, is we want to reduce that friction. And with Authy, you get this new thing called One Touch. I mean, it's no longer new. I mean, Mark has been pushing us for like a year to set that up. But then we really like this concept of One Touch, wherein you no longer have to enter your OTP code on the phone. To me, that's really beneficial in terms of like on a daily basis. OTP is not such a big deal, but then I hate to be the guy who always looks at his phone and types in the code all the time. I'd rather just have a request that comes in on my phone, which I can just say accept or deny. That is the future for us. I mean, that's the direction we want to head to, because it makes life really simple for someone who is doing it on a daily basis. Say if I log in 10 times a day or 5 times a day, I mean, I want to have something that's much more easier than like looking at the code and typing it in. I think so far we've definitely liked our Authy experience, and I think with One Touch, we like it even more.
So Sudesh, it is fantastic what Twitch has done with Authy. We appreciate the support. Any reactions that you can share with your users in terms of adding two-factor authentications? Given that tweet earlier, has people gotten a little happier about the fact that you're now protecting the service?
Absolutely. I think initially there was a lot of pushback in terms of why do I need to do 2FA? I mean, what value it is adding to me? So for me, the biggest metric is like if you're building a user service, if you're building a service that's going to scale to hundreds and millions of users, build 2FA as soon as you onboard your first sort of celebrity on your system, or rather your platform. The first time someone gets hacked on your system and goes and complains on Twitter, that's it for you. So if you're actually growing at a rapid pace, you don't want to be that guy and sort of work towards adding more security to a platform when it's really out there. I mean, every service goes through this sort of process, or I would say catharsis, in terms of saying, okay, now security is really going to impact my bottom line, and that's when you start taking security seriously. I mean, the metric that I mentioned is really, really useful for someone who's trying to build a service like that.
So you're saying that 2FA shouldn't be an afterthought.
Right.
It should be something that you plan on, especially if you're planning on success, and because it becomes a lot more difficult to enroll all those mass users after the fact.
That's right. Yeah, that's always going to be a problem, because people are always going to push back when they have an established presence on a certain portal like Twitch, for that matter. Like maybe I was a user since 2011, and we introduced, say, two-factor authentication a couple of years ago. There's a huge amount of gap in terms of the users sort of like setting up 2FA on the system. So I think that's a problem in terms of delaying it as far as possible. But the bigger problem is how do you communicate this to the users? Like, what would it take to sort of help your users enable 2FA as soon as possible? I think I would think about more in terms of features. Like, the next time you have a critical release in planning and a critical feature coming out, couple that with 2FA so that people have some incentive to upgrade to that new feature and enable 2FA on the system. This has been one of the common problems a lot of services face, and I think there are ways around it, so that's one creative way.
Could you imagine moving towards opt-out instead of opt-in?
It's sort of difficult, particularly to do a sort of an opt-out procedure, because you have to have their phone numbers. If you have their phone numbers already, maybe you can pre-enroll them. It would be nice to do that. I mean, it's probably much easier to do in an enterprise context, because you already have the direct information. You already have all piece of information you need about the users. With a consumer service where you really don't have a lot of user details, it's sort of hard to do that.
So maybe somewhere in between where, as you mentioned, you have a new rollout, you offer the opportunity in the normal user flow when they're setting up the new experience, and at that point they can opt out of it and move on if they don't want it, or right there is the opportunity to set up two-factor authentication.
This is always a discussion you have with the growth team and security team. So this never flies really well when you're talking to growth, because they're trying to optimize for having the easiest and simplest sign-up process that you could ever have. And adding a layer of, say, a protection, or adding one more barrier to that process is always going to be a challenge. But then, if you look at the other side, when you hit a critical mass, when you're probably in millions and millions of users, you probably want that barrier, because you also want your system to be stable and also your community to be safe. So that's probably something we might consider in the future, but in the short term, I don't think it's a great fit at the moment. But if I were building a service that was sort of at this scale and maybe a few years down the line, I would definitely think about doing that way.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Sudesh, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. As we can see, security ain't no game at Twitch, and we appreciate the details on your implementation.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone.